Okay.
Okay, good morning everyone. صباح الخير للمشاهدين اللي معنا في ليبيا وفي العالم العربي. This is a very special event that we are conducting today. It has been part of a series of follow-up leading to the elections on the December 24th. The National Council based in Washington, D.C. has always had interest and focus on trying to not only follow events in Libya towards stabilization, but also try and get a sense of what and how the United States of America and its international allies perceive their engagement in Libya and where they are going to be taking it according to how things evolve on every aspect, whether it is the elections, whether other relations, conducting links with education, health, business, and so forth. So this is a very, it's another attempt by the National Council to educate people in the United States and elsewhere as to what is happening in Libya. And of course, the most important event that we are looking at is the 24th of December elections. Will it happen? What are the challenges that we have? Is it real that the 24th of December is a fixed date that we all have to buy into with all the goods and bads that it comes to? Are we prepared for it? There's only 12 days left and everybody has anticipations, but nobody is really sure whether the elections are going to go forward or not. There are speculations that there may be delays. What are the implications of this? We don't know. Are we ready for the day after? Do we know on the 25th of December where we're going? How will the United States shape its policy in regards to what happens after? Those are kind of areas that we wanted to discuss today. And I'm very honored and very happy to see the distinguished individuals that are very much engaged in the thought process of where we're going in regards to the elections. I'm also very honored that I will be basically pulling back and giving the gavel to Edward Joseph, who is the moderator for this event. And without any further introduction, I'm going to hand it over to Edward to lead the moderation on this very important topic. Edward?
Thank you, Dr. Shanib. Thank you, Hani. And thank you for your leadership of the National Council on U.S.-Libya Relations. And thanks to all of our esteemed panelists here joining us and all the viewers there. And let me say to all those watching in Libya, sabah al-khair. We know that this is a momentous occasion. You know, Hani, there's the cliche you often hear of some country is at the crossroads. We always see that, this country. But in this case, it's actually true. Libya is truly at the crossroads because this election, whether it happens, whether it doesn't happen, and how it happens, it's very unlikely that the situation is going to remain as we see it now, that just this exact same status quo. And in fact, so many things are in flux within Libya. Hani, you alluded to a number of these questions, the technical and the preparations for the elections, the obviously highly divisive political context, the security context, outstanding military questions, and we have even controversy or some disarray within the UN itself with the sudden resignation of the head of UNSMIL and the special representative of the Secretary General, Jan Kubis, and the quasi appointment of Stephanie Williams back, bringing her back. So there's just an array of questions. A senior US official appeared before a House committee last week and pronounced that the US is fully backing this election approach and maintained that that in fact the situation is prepared. But to really find out, we brought together this wonderful, I will say, all-star team of speakers. And just so our viewers know, we'll be going in the order that you saw listed on the invitation. So Mohammed El-Jari, the director of Libya desk, Tobruk, will begin. Then we have an actual candidate, a presidential candidate, Fadil Lamine, presidential candidate and special advisor on MENA affairs. Zara Langi, we're very pleased to see Zara again, who's a forum member of the Libya Political Dialogue. That's the entity, the forum that under which this entire political apparatus was agreed. And so Zara, we welcome you back again. And we're very pleased to have a esteemed Libyan constitutional lawyer, Aza Maghur. Aza, welcome. So pleased to have you. And of course, the chairman of the NCUSLR advisory board and a highly respected expert and consultant on Libya, Wolfgang Putzai, joining us from Vienna. So again, we'll turn to Mohammed. And Mohammed, please, if you could, give us the context here. Is Libya ready for these elections slated to come in just some 11 days? Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm very happy that I'm able to join the panel. I'm on the move, so sorry for not being able to have the camera on. I hope you're all able to hear me. Regarding your question, Edward, was Libya ever ready for elections since 2011? Will Libya ever be ready for elections in 5-10 years from now? Like meaningful, fair, free elections on the principles that and the foundations that we all want to see happen. And the answer to that is no. Libya will not be perfectly ready to hold an election. There will always be huge challenges to any elections, like there were challenges in 2012, 2014, and there are challenges here today. Now, the question is, why was there an agreement to hold these elections in Libya in the first place? What is the aim of these elections? The aim of these elections is to remove expired institutions and politicians and political class who have outstayed their mandate in Libya since 2012 and 2014, respectively. Now, when this date was agreed, when this agreement was put in place and this unity government was put in place, all these challenges were clear that we are facing today. And yet, it has been agreed that a unity government should be formed and elections should be held on 24 December. That has been the agreement. The problem now is that we are having UNSMIL, the international community, including some who have been supportive of the elections, recently deciding that, well, Libya might not be ready for elections because of all the challenges that we already knew existed when this agreement was drawn up. And unfortunately now, whether we are able to hold elections on the 24th of December or not, I think the answer is no. There will not be elections on 24 December. I guess now the question is, how long, if there is a delay to the elections, how long is this delay going to be? And in accordance with what terms and what agreement? And who is going to determine those, if you like, determine those terms of such an agreement to delay elections? Let me speak a little bit on the external level. Unfortunately, some countries have been surprised, for example, by the fact that Saif al-Islam al-Gaddafi was allowed by Libyan courts to run in an election. To them, that became priority number one, that Saif al-Islam does not run, i.e. they were supportive of elections. Elections are great, but elections that involve Saif al-Islam are not welcome and they're not great. and they have to be stopped. And action is actually now being taken in that regard to ensure that Saif al-Islam does not run for whatever considerations there. It could be that because he's seen as a war criminal wanted by the ICC, but it's also the fact that Saif al-Islam al-Gaddafi would be returning potentially to power after 10 years of NATO and Western and Arab nations bombing the regime of his father out of Libya. And then 10 years later, Libyans decide that Saif al-Islam is the way to go to Libya. And that is an uncomfortable fact or reality for especially Western countries to accept at this stage. And this is why we are now witnessing an attempt to delay elections by UNSMIL and some of the Western countries that have previously been supportive of the elections for the mere fact that Saif al-Islam is now running in the elections. But again, let me be clear on this. Everyone knew that these challenges that we're facing today existed back in 2014, existed back in 2019, 2020, when this agreement was being drawn up. It is no surprise that we are facing this magnitude of challenges. I think I'll stop here and we will continue the conversation. Thank you.
Mohammed, thank you for that very clear and to the point explanation. Let me just, while I've got you, and I know you're on the move, and we hear you fine, by the way. You're coming through both clear in your audio and in your articulation. And Mohammed, let me just drill down. Are you saying that the main reason for a postponement of the election is because of Saif, his controversial candidacy, and not because of other disputes about the election law or technical problems with the elections, but you've zeroed in on his candidacy and that the problem that it represents? Is that right, or is it actually several obstacles that will force what you predict is a postponement?
Several obstacles obviously existed all along. And despite those obstacles, very clear obstacles, we still had some in the international community continuing to push for 24 December. And not even agreeing to negotiate on that date. But since the emergence in addition, obviously, to, as I said, all the challenges that we already knew that existed, legal, political, security, whether the elections could be held in a fair and free environment with the reality that we have in Libya, all of these challenges have been there for a while. But now we are witnessing an effort by the very same countries or entities that have pushed for the elections on 24 December, now making a U-turn and using the same arguments that have been used in the past. And the only new emergence on the scene is the fact that Saif al-Islam al-Gaddafi presented his candidacy. His candidacy was accepted, it was disputed, and then are witnessing an effort by countries that previously have said that the mandate of the GNU will end on the 24th of December. Now they are leading an effort to argue that the government of national unity should remain beyond the 24th of December, and that it is the only and sole legitimate government in Libya, despite the fact that Libyan actors are saying, no, this government will not be, and a significant number of Libyan actors are saying, no, this government will not be recognized after 24th of December. Yesterday, I had the honor of co-facilitating a meeting between a number of presidential candidates using Zoom. They were very clear and unequivocal to the fact that the mandate of this government, the mandate of its prime minister, who also wanted to run in the elections in contradiction to all his commitments and to the text of the political roadmap, if he is allowed to run and if his government is allowed to remain in place beyond the 24th of December, to them, that means instability, insecurity, and potentially the return to a new conflict, a new armed confrontation between various actors. So the message is coming wide and clear from Libyans from across the spectrum. You're talking about yesterday we had people from the former regime, September. We had people from allied with Khalifa Haftar. We had Misratans, including Fathi Bashaga, etc. They all agreed on this very basic point. But they are being told that because there is, if you like, a certain minority that wants to stay in power and is threatening that if they leave, they might cause some problem or they might escalate, they're being told, no, we should then delay elections. One more point regarding the potential delay for elections. Yesterday, it was agreed that, okay, let's not kid ourselves. Elections are not going to happen on 24 December, but who is going to take responsibility for the delay? How long it's going to be for, and under what terms is it going to be? And the other insistence from the candidates was that the 24th of December should remain a milestone for the electoral process in Libya, i.e. that the final candidates lists and the campaigning phase should start on that date at the very least. Otherwise, they will view that if that does not happen, they will view that the whole electoral process has been sabotaged and that it is not going to be happen. And as a result, we will then start to witness escalations of sorts on all fronts.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. Again, all coming through quite clear, as was your main point about that the purpose of these elections, despite all the difficulties and the exceedingly high challenges, was to remove, and you put it very well, expired institutions and political class who have outstayed their mandate. And what you're telling us now is that the U-turn on that main objective is itself very problematic. Why? Because it leaves in place an interim government that, as Zara knows, who was part of the Libya forum, the Libya Dialogue Forum, was clearly meant to be purely temporary, and in which the interim prime minister signed a formal pledge not to run as a candidate. So it's problematic either way. It's problematic to go forward with the elections, and it's problematic here, as you say, for a postponement. And you raised three questions: who will take responsibility? On what terms will that delay will be, and how long will that delay be for? And also, what will be the nature? Will the 24th of December be a milestone? So, Mohammed, again, thank you so much for that. And now we're going to turn to an actual presidential candidate, Fadil Lamine. Fadil, please, your perspective as a candidate. How do you feel about a potential U-turn, a potential delay? Is there any chance that in your opinion, that 24 December could go ahead? And if not, what are the conditions for any delay that you see? Please, Fadil, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, you're coming through loud and clear.
Unfortunately, okay, great. Unfortunately, the internet in Tripoli is not that great, so I wouldn't be able to be on video at the same time. But thank you so much for the opportunity, and I welcome all your guests, and thank you for organizing this. Much appreciated. Well, the fact is, let me start by acknowledging what my friend Mohammed said. I think he was spot on most of the issue, if not all, on issue related to why should we have this election. I call this an election is a reset election. All these expired bodies, they have to go. We have to reset the whole scene, and the only way we can reset the scene that we have to go, we have to have all these bodies leave the scene, and this can only be done through an election. We have tried, and I was part of Skhirat agreement and part of so many efforts to try to come up with a compromise where all the parties can be part of a negotiated settlement. We found out that Libyans are not willing to abide and respect their signed pledges. And we've seen the last one in the last couple of weeks when the Prime Minister himself was absolving himself of the pledge that he signed with the United Nations, with UNSMA's process in Geneva. Are there any kind of U-turns? Maybe. Should we allow those U-turns to exist and to happen? I think it will be a power of wills, in my opinion. The Libyan people, after all, 2.8 million have registered to vote. 2.4 more than 2.4 million have picked up their election voting cards. This is an election where the Libyan people decide to participate and become part of the process. They have been sidelined for quite some time. We cannot ignore 2.4 million people and just go with the wishes of one party or another, or an analysis by one analyst or another. Or at the same time, we cannot just abide by the wishes and the whims of the spoilers at the same time. We do have quite a conglomerate of different people who don't like to see the election happen for one reason or another. And it became a power, a struggle of will. It has to happen because the Libyan people want to participate and express their view. After all, 10 years of chaos and instability, only the Libyan people have experienced the outcome of this wars and destruction, and the corruption and what we've seen today. Should we look at a possible technical delay or shifting of the dates? Yes. This is the first election. This is the first ever presidential election in the history of Libya. So we know, and everybody knows, it shouldn't be perfect. It cannot be perfect. And we should not try to make it perfect. Should we have enough time to try to resolve as many issues and difficulty as possible? Yes, we should. Would we be able to resolve all of them? No. How should we proceed? There are technical processes, issues related to the to how the election would be conducted. I think the High Commission, Election Commission, should be involved in this. There are some disputes that were unresolved issue related to some candidates. These disputes have to be resolved. Unfortunately, some of them were referred to the courts. The courts were not as forthcoming as people expect. There are some doubts about how free and fair the judicial system, given many interferences, be it via offering more salaries, new salaries, higher salaries, and so on and so forth, or fear that may happen. Some judges were discussing the law itself, if it's a good law or not, if it's a fair law or not, instead of just abiding by ruling according to the law. They felt that they have to express their views into the text of the law itself, which is it's not the responsibility of the judges. So we do have quite a number of issues. Some are technical, some are political, judicial. The High Commission decided to consult with the legislative body and to consult with the High Supreme Court of Judicial Supreme Court, and to consult with its legal teams, because they cannot all be right. They have excluded some people those people, for lack of adhering to the requirements, but the courts have reinstated them. Either the commission was wrong or the courts were wrong. They cannot be both right. So these are issues, and I'm not. I do have the patience to, and we should have to take some time to resolve and try to decipher these issues ahead, as many of them as possible ahead of the election. What we have agreed yesterday, and I think just to do some shifting, since the final candidate list has not been released yet, and it will be released in the next few days, I think, that we shift some of the dates. It's not postponing the elections, not delaying the election per se. It's more of consolidating maybe some of the dates of the election. This is acceptable. Some controversial issues we have to come to terms with it. The election commission has to take back to the lead on this. I think they have lost some control of the process, and they need to regain control of the process. I will stop here and thank you for the opportunity.
Fadil, thank you so much for that. That was very helpful here. And let me just share what is my impression, Fadil, of what I think of your very reasonable portrayal of this, that, okay, we're going to have some technical delay, but it's really consolidating the process. It's not some kind of open-ended postponement, so that to avoid that. But of course, the risk there is if there's not control of that, then of course the door is open to all of those spoilers who want to see a protracted delay and don't want to see these elections. And if I understand it right, the position of the international community, and here the basic, those countries that are involved, and Mohammed referred to this, is that they're aware. Nobody is not aware of these problems, but the word that I would use to describe their attitude is momentum. That they have a sense that the situation in Libya is so fractured, so debased, and as Mohammed said, these and Fadil, you also said, these institutions and actors are so past their date of expiry that the only possibility to have some pathway to stability is to clear this old ruling class out. And so that's why I would imagine why we hear like that senior US official to come before Congress and say, yeah, you know, they're pushing forward and the machinery is in place and it's moving forward. But the risks, again, the risks appear to be either way. Let me bring in now, Fadil, unless you had any further comment, I was going to turn now to Zahra, who also has been not just a commentator and an activist, a leading important activist for many years now in Libya, but also a participant in the Libya Political Dialogue Forum, who has intimate knowledge of these convoluted processes that led to this situation. And Zahra, could I, Fadil, if it's okay with you, I'm going to give the floor to Zahra now, please. Zahra.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So where should I start? Well, I might start with the last idea that Fadil just said, that the HNEC is back now in the driving seat of the electoral process. And I've always called for supporting HNEC to play the role of the grantor institution at a moment, the last 2 weeks, we've seen the failure and maybe more of a hiccup coming out because of the whole issue with the legal appeals. Some have seen, maybe Azza will speak more on this, especially the legal aspect. But again, I very much think that definitely we need a pause. I was a very strong advocate for holding the elections on the 24th of December. However, with the dramatic developments that we've seen due to many things, primarily the problematic aspect of the legal framework, whether the constitutional framework or the law itself, the relentless, perpetual efforts by the forces of the status quo to sabotage the roadmap and the elections, defrauding Libyans of the right to choose their representatives. So, especially with the vacuum that we had lately, with the sudden resignation of not sudden for many of us who are in the process, we knew all about it. But there was this vacuum with the lack of leadership of UNSMIL as mediators in this process. So, and maybe it's important to highlight here the latest letter that came out of by 17 members of the Libyan Political Dialogue Forum, addressed to the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres and the Berlin Conference working group, urging them basically to intervene, to stop the developments that threaten the political process, especially seeing the Prime Minister of the interim government of national unity running in the elections in contravention with the pledges and he made, which is part of the roadmap. So also, actually, the letter that we sent to the Antonio Guterres, it was even before, it was meant to come out even before the appointment of Stephanie Williams as his special advisor. So we were calling actually in the first place for the immediate appointment of a UN special envoy, because it was not conceivable that we go to a very, we all know, sensitive elections without the oversight of UNSMIL itself. So UNSMIL was lacking a leadership. Hopefully now with the return of Stephanie Williams and the pause of the elections, we would very much like to see a change also in UNSMIL itself. Unfortunately, not only with the lack of leadership of the former special envoy, but also during the time of Stephanie Williams, we've seen how when there were serious allegations, nobody was held accountable. And we can say there was normalization of corruption in the political process that is run by the UN. And that's important to address, especially if there would be, and I would imagine there will be so, even if we're going for elections, and definitely we should go and stick to the electoral process, because the whole idea, as Mohammed and Fadil were saying, is to have a reset to renew the political legitimacy, because it's not anymore possible going to create governments of national unity based on power sharing. And it was basically among political elite. The idea is we need both. We need to renew political legitimacy through elections. But the question is, how are we going to have that process? How are we going to mitigate the challenges, especially when we have a very loose electoral law? And we know that there were these forces, even in the LPDF, who have sabotaged the whole constitutional basis process just to derail the elections. So with this government that is in place now we have, even if we're pausing the elections and shifting the date of the elections, there's an issue that we have to deal with, is what legitimacy do we have? Does this government has? And as I've called 2 weeks ago in another talk, that especially when Dbeiba won his appeal, that we need definitely to appoint another government, because the whole idea of the government of national unity, according to the Berlin process conclusions and the roadmap, is basically to play the role of the grantor institution to lead Libyans to the electoral process. So if we're pausing it today, it's these people, the spoilers, should not benefit from this, call it postponement. It's not a postponement because the electoral process has already started. And that's problematic, by the way, from a legal perspective. But then the problem is not legal. It needs some kind of a political settlement. So definitely there will be going back to the political process. But I hope that if we're going back to the political process to address these issues, that the challenges and how to create guarantees, how to mitigate these challenges, I hope that we can link the processes, the tracks, the political, the economic, and the security track together. From the very early on, there was siloing between the processes. And I think linking the process, and especially whenever we have a political stalemate, we see the military or the security track leading. So I think there's a lot can be done there. Also with the economics, track, they were have been suddenly stopped, and actually there has been an international working group, so it's not anymore a process that is owned by Libyans. So I think at the moment need to clean clean UNSMIL, change the staff, who has the staff members, especially the staff members who have been involved and have a direct relationship with political parties, and namely the government of the GNU. There should be restructuring of not only of the LPDF, but the entire process. I think with having in mind that our way is basically the roadmap, is going through elections to renew the political legitimacy through elections. So should be plan A, but always we should always have plan B, but let's stick to plan A for now.
Thank you so much, Zara. We have to see whether plan A is viable. So that's what you put it very well, that there may have to be a plan B. The problem, of course, is bringing all of those silos together. That's the job of a government. That's the job of a government.
No, that's the job of the mediator. And we were not having a real mediator. So there are issues about the integrity of the mediator. And there are issues in the process itself. And so this is ideally plan A, which is the reset. Plan B, I always call it restitution. Restitution is another thing, because plan A is we're sticking to the constitutional declaration, we're going through elections, and we should not derail that. Though I believe there are big issues, and it will be another roundabout, because we've been there before. I've been in political processes since 2013, and we've been doing that all of the time. And always we've been trying plan A, the roadmap, and it's basically based on the constitutional declaration. But plan B would be something else. And the precedent we have, and I talked about elsewhere, is Cambodia after the failure of the Paris Agreement in 1991 and the restitution and restoration of the constitutional monarchy. But I think that's just leave it as, but that would be another stick for certain political forces who are trying to maintain the status quo. The idea is the status quo is not sustainable. So let's stick to this plan A, which is a reset. And with the pause at the moment is basically to correct and mitigate all these challenges.
Well said, Zara. Thank you for that. And so that I understand and can see that you have a vision for two different possibilities, but the aim being to try to stick to this roadmap and get this renewal of legitimacy through elections, but to note that there is a alternate path, but people would have to be serious about that alternate path, and to see to get a perspective on that path and the current legal perspectives on the election and all the challenges about the electoral law, about the candidates, about the Constitution. We bring in Aza Magur. Aza, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Edward. I thank Dr. Shanib for the invitation. I would like to share a small presentation with you, and I think I have something to say on the legal aspect, not the political one that has been covered by the other colleagues, but I would like to share this with you if it's possible. Let me see where it is. I think that's it, yeah. Okay. Okay, I prepared this for this event. So let me say that the train of election has already begun. So even the title is not very accurate because we are already there. We are already on the process of election operation. What governs this whole process? The UNSMEL roadmap, of course, that's put the date, which is important, but the date is not the election. The date is important, but it's not the election process. It's part of the election process. So you can shift it, you can change it, you can adjourn it, you can deal with it. Law number 1 of 2021, which is related to the election of the president of Libya, and law number 2 of 2021 related to the election of the parliament, the new parliament, and the process that has been adopted by HNEC, the High Commission for election, which has done a lot of work from a logistical point of view, from a regulations. They issued lots of regulations, and The judiciary has been involved. They looked at certain claims and they have had the judgment on that. So there is no way to stop. There is no way to stop. Stopping means going back to square one, going back to 2014 and having this division and probably wars. And the issue of legitimacy is very important here. Very important. You have seen all of these governments, whether they were appointed by the political settlements or they were appointed by the Libyan, the Libyan plans has been based on the Constitutional Declaration. All of this didn't work because you need legitimacy today. Prime ministers, the presidents of parliament, they're signing papers, they're dealing with issues about the state. It's the fate of the people. You cannot give it to people who lack legitimacy. That's not possible anymore. So I'll just show you here, and I want to emphasize on the fact that today we are in a preparatory phase. We are not in a transitional phase. We're actually lower than a transitional phase. How can you leave a country on a preparatory phase when the UN uses terms? We have to understand these terms. These terms are not used just like that. It's clear in the roadmap. It has been repeatedly said. This is a preparatory phase. How can a country continue in a preparatory phase? That's not possible. So the election is actually to put Libya into a transitional phase that would probably lead Libya, inshallah, on God's will, into a permanent phase of a country by adopting a constitution. So today, this situation, being a preparatory situation, cannot be sustained. It's not sustainable. So what is the preparatory phase? Preparatory phase started with the Libyan Dialogue Forum, 2020, late 2020. So they appointed a presidential council and a government of national unity. The mission, one of the main mission of the Libyan Dialogue Forum is to provide the constitutional base. This didn't happen. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. But however, election laws has been promulgated by the HOR. Okay, these laws are full of holes and issues and contradiction, but we have somehow, as Fadil said and as everybody said, there's not a perfect situation in Libya now. But we have legislation to start with. HNEC did a tremendous job. They put regulations on the logistic side. They're also adopting international standards. And now we are looking for the 24th of December, and the election process has been started. So the election process started in 2020. People think that the election process started just now. Actually, it started in 2020. It started there when the idea of election has put as a seed. So it's not today. And in this preparatory phase, the best thing in this preparatory phase is that there is a merging between the international plan and the local plan. From 2014 up to 2020, it was merely an international plan. The national plan was not there anymore, but the merging happened in 2020. So you have 3 or 4 international documents: the roadmap, the chapter on unified executive authority, chapter on legitimacy of candidacy, a Libyan political agreement, all of these. But also you have the Libyan constitution, which is back somehow, and you have the law number 1 and the law number 2 and the HNEC regulations. So you have set of legislation, let's say set of documents and legislation that have been merged together since 2020, which is in the spirit of the Berlin conclusions. Okay, now what do we have today? Today you have the political dinosaurs, as Ms. Williams said. Okay, I described all of these institutions that's still in Libya. Look how complicated it is. Look how complicated. And then you have what we're aiming for, the new institutions, which are very simple. It's back to the basis of constitution standards, international standards all over the world. So you're getting out from the de facto institutions. These are all de facto institutions. They're not de jure, to a de jure institution. You have 2.5 million people who are registered as voters. You have almost 73 candidates. You have facts. Now you have facts. You have 5,000 parliamentarian candidates. So what are you going to do with this? Are we going to just let them down? Are we going to just go over them and say, sorry, we cannot make it? I mean, this is not possible. You have facts. You have already started since end of 2020. You started with the election proceedings. So there are positive, of course, issues, but there are also negative issues. There are legislative weakness and loopholes, detection of serious early obstacles like a primary candidate, the detection of actually we realized that the judiciary is not as strong as we thought. There's certain weakness, the hesitation sometimes and indecisiveness by the HNEC. There's also the process of vetting was not was not done in a very meticulous way. They did not take their time, and they did not do it with, I'm speaking about the vetting of candidates for the presidential candidate. I think they need more work to be done there, but the responsibility should not be completely put on HNEC. Other institutions are trying to put all the responsibility on HNEC. No. These institutions who participated in the process of operation on the election process since, as I said, 2020, they should bear the responsibility and share it with HNEC. So let's say this election must for Libyans, it must succeed. We have no choice. We're talking about elections as if it's a choice, as if this country is a stable country. This country is in a preparatory phase. It's on the edge of collapsing completely. It's on the edge of other war. So here we're talking about it's not a choice. It has to work, and working together with all of these institutions, I think it's possible. It's possible. Now, why I'm putting HNEC in the middle? Because HNEC has a very good basis. It has good law number 8. What does law number 8 say? It says it's a complete independence. HNEC has complete independence. Look at these words. Look at these strong words. Total neutrality, transparency, and international standards. So you have this. You can work with this. You can go upon that and continue this trajectory. Now, ANSML, as Zahra said, and she's close to this institution, and she's saying that there was a lack of leadership. Well, I think ANSML did not do the job. They stopped once they have secured the election date and all of these documents I mentioned above. They just stopped, and what I described as the merging of international and national trajectories didn't continue. It's always like that with the ANSML. I don't know why. They don't finish the whole job. They stopped and they left it to the institutions which are Libyan institutions, which are already weak and lack legitimacy. They should have pursued this until the end. So today Mrs. Williams is back. It's a very good indication, in my opinion. But she's back not as United Nations Security General Special Envoy. She's not back as the head of ANSML. Be careful with this. She's back as an advisor to the United Nations Secretary General on Libya. So this has to be taken carefully. So what's her position? What's her duty? I mean, when I read about her duty, she has actually extensive duty. She has big duties, and they even talk about her. She needs good offices, which is okay, not very strong. Mediation, not very strong efforts, but engagement with Libyan regional and international stakeholders. So they're giving. This is not the job of an advisor. It's actually more than advisor. It's not the head of mission, of course. She's not at the level of a head of mission, but with lots of maneuvers and competence to work, and a head of mission means that he's backed or she is backed by the Security Council, which gives her power or gives him power. Here there isn't that backing from the Security Council, unfortunately. But the mission is quite large. So here, with all of these involved Presidential Council, the judiciary somehow, the HOR, but the HNEC, I repeat, it's here that they can do a lot with the fact that they have strong competence, that they have strong neutrality, that they are backed by the law, and they have the international standards, and they have the backing of international community, and also the Libyans who registered in masses for this elections. So there is a way out, in my opinion. Just you need cooperation, support, and sharing responsibility. So I end up very quickly by saying that UNSMIL should finish its job until the end of the election operation, and sometimes even after. Election operation has started and should be resumed with clear dates, So if you go back to the law, if you go back to law number 1, related to the presidential election, you will find clear that it's the commission, the HNEC, can propose dates. They can propose what do you call it? The marahil, yani, stages. They can propose stages. So they can do that, and the HOR has to issue a decision on any postponement or any new dates for election. So this is not difficult. The law has a way out on that. HNEC is not the sole operator of the election. It is part of the chain of procedures. Public awareness also related to the election operation is important. Vetting is important. It's important that the HNEC begins a new process of transparency. All of the files of the candidate should be online. It should be online. People have to see who are going to be the president of Libya. It's so important. It's not an easy issue to take it, that easy, even within the law. Even the judiciary took it a bit easy, not that strong. That should be really taking as it should be. So election should be a joy for Libyans and not a burden, nor a source of anxiety and trouble, in my opinion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Azza. That was quite clear and a great reminder of the fact that there is a process, that it is a Libyan process as well as an international process, and that there's no choice. The only point to make, Azza, is that this key question of UNSMIL doing its job, or HNEC doing its job, that this is always the difficult one. Who is going to take the responsibility? If the courts are not doing that, and if HNEC is not, then UNSMIL and others, they're reluctant to take that responsibility on these very difficult questions, the kind that Mohammed and Fadil referred to. The other point here is we should always keep in mind the Libyan people. You mentioned that they've registered, Fadil mentioned, it's 2.4 million. So there does seem to be among the citizenry a desire to express their will at the ballot box. But what actually will happen on the 11th, or if it's postponed thereafter, that's the open question. And for that insight onto that, we turn to our advisory board chair and noted expert on Libya, Wolfgang Putzai. Wolfgang, please take the floor.
Thank you very much, Ed. My first point is that Libya is right now as close to elections as it never ever was since 2014. So the questions for me are, what could prevent them right now from happening? And there was already quite a discussion about this. What will happen in the case that they are postponed, not only technically? And if the elections really take place, what will happen thereafter? I would say there are 4 groups of main actors with specific intentions. At first, there are those who want to prevent the elections from happening right now and preferably at all. Those are the jihadists, fortunately not many, but they use violent means and terrorist attacks. There is some information that the Islamic State has re-established some cells in the vicinity of Tripoli. There are the Islamists. There is the High Council of State, the Muslim Brotherhood, the Grand Mufti, and several others who also would prefer to delay the elections until there is a constitutional foundation, an uncontested constitutional foundation, which could last several years. And then we will need to be honest, there are also ordinary citizens who are simply scared that they could end up with another dictator. My message to them is, as there is a first round of presidential elections on 24 December, and as it is extremely unlikely that one of the candidates will make the 50+1%, you can bet that your president will be elected only at best in the second round, and there will be also a parliament at this time. The second group, probably most dangerous group, are those who will only accept if their own candidate wins. And if their candidate does not win, or one of their candidates, they have the capability for major destabilization. I consider among these the militias and the power bases in Misrata. I consider among these, and please be aware that's a separate group to me, the Dabeba clan. And I consider among these certainly Khalifa Haftar and the Libyan National Army. There are others with limited means for destabilization. Those are the Eastern Federalists who are quite disunited, and those are the Greens supporting Saif al-Islam. I think those could make some troubles, but they would not have the capabilities for major destabilization of the country. The fourth group, from my point of view, the most important group, are the ordinary Libyans, seeking peace, stability, and acceptable living circumstances. And those members of this fourth group should go out and vote on 24 December. Yes, there are controversial candidates, like Saif al-Islam and his ICC warrant, like Haftar, who was waging war against the Tripoli government, and especially right now, Abdul Hamid Dabeba, who should not only not run because of the electoral law, but from my point, more important, because of his LPDF commitment not to run. A commitment which is part of the roadmap, which is endorsed by the UN Security Council Resolution 2570. And if it is ignored, it also undermines the credibility of the United Nations Security Council. Dabeba was campaigning as a prime minister since months. He was exactly doing what the United Security Council and the LPDF wanted to prevent. If he runs due to his campaigning, he has a very good chance to win. But this will be rejected by many. So what kind of international interference can be expected? I would say until after the elections, this involvement will be limited. After the elections, or if the elections are postponed for a longer period, they will again openly support some specific partners. I foresee 4 possible scenarios. The elections are postponed for more than a few days, so for more than for technical reasons, because of security, legal reasons, administrative reasons, and maybe also because too many are really scared of an upcoming dictatorship. The decision for such a postponement would be by the HOR. I doubt that the HOR is able, and I doubt even more that it is willing to do so. If there is more than a brief technical delay, if the whole legal package, and Asa has elaborated about it, is reopened, I promise there won't be elections anytime soon. The consequences would be a lack of legitimacy of the government and destabilization. If the first round of presidential elections takes place on 24 December or shortly thereafter, if the final 2 presidential candidates for the runoff are widely accepted, if there is a high voter turnout, and if there is limited election fraud, this would be a positive sign. For the second round, if the elections are postponed for more than a few days, let's imagine Saif and Haftar end up in the runoff, I would see the same consequences as of above. I would see a lasting destabilization of the country. I would see a continuing government which has no real legitimacy. If the second round of presidential and parliamentary elections takes place in February or shortly thereafter, and if the criteria for acceptance, including the voter turnout and the limited election fraud, and if the 2 final candidates for presidential elections are widely accepted, the outcome would be a positive one. This would be a chance. Before coming to an end, let me elaborate what destabilization, and I have sketched several paths towards destabilization. What this destabilization would mean? It would mean no legitimate government in place. It would mean that the House of Representatives elected in 2014 and the High Council of State, never ever elected, would continue. This would mean that the GNU would probably continue without legitimacy, except maybe if the Eastern Deputy Prime Minister Al-Qadrani becomes Prime Minister. This could maybe get the support of the House of Representatives. But the continuing GNU would not be recognized by many. It would be rejected probably by most presidential candidates. It could end up in the establishment of regional governments. Let's imagine that the elections continue in the East only. The situation there would allow it, as it looks right now. So if we have such a regional government again, what would this mean for the main economic institutions? Would the international community support the GNU, which is outdated? We'll see. How to regain legitimacy in such a case? The HOR could extend the GNU, but as I said, this would be only realistic from my point if Al-Qadrani or someone else from the East would take over as a prime minister. There could be an LPDF number 2. There could be a National Assembly, as we had seen before Haftar decided to attack Tripoli. Maybe there are other options. But my conclusion is, if there are no elections anytime soon, the country will certainly end up in a crisis much worse than today. If there are elections, the country could also end up in a crisis. But there is also the chance for a turning point to the better. It is up to the Libyans, mainly to the fourth group that I've mentioned before, the ordinary Libyans seeking peace, stability, and an ordinary way of life. It is up to them to go out and vote. The more of them are going out and voting, the better are the chances for a turning point to the better.
Wolfgang, thank you very much for elaborating those very clear scenarios, including basically a binary where if elections are postponed for a protracted period, we're looking at a almost certain crisis, whereas if they are held, perhaps after some short delay, there's at least a chance that Libya could emerge from crisis. So thank you for sharing all that. And now to put all of this that we've heard, all of these different perspectives from the reality on the ground, the scenarios for the future, what we heard from Zara about Plan A, Plan B, Azad speaking about a planning process that is now moved into a more mature one and cannot really be turned off. We come back to Dr. Shanib. Hani, what is your view? What should those who have authority in Libya, what should they do to achieve the best possible outcome in these days before the 24th? Hani, please, you have the floor.
Well, I think we've heard from our eloquent speakers about the situation as it is today. I think Libyans are very good at the game of blaming others as to why they are stuck in this situation right now. We've heard that the train has gone. We've heard that the Libyans really want to move on and that elections is probably the only way to go. And we also heard that the obstacles that were supposed to be tackled in the last 6 months have not really been addressed in an efficient way for one reason or another, perhaps because of a lack of experience, because of the absence of proper institutions in Libya to be able to respond to these challenges and bring solution to it. Perhaps it has to do with the UN office in Libya and the very sour relation between the office and the Libyans themselves. There's a sort of an element of lack of trust. It is not just a feeling, it is a precipitation of many years of failure to reach the conclusion, and it's natural after a while. With so many representatives that were sent to Libya, Mitri, Leon, Ghassan Salama, Stephanie, and so on, to reach to a point where there is a lack of confidence in the surgeon that is going to do another operation on you. So all of those things, that you have controversial figures that really weigh very heavily on not just the way the elections are going to go, but also after the elections. Will those heavy guerrillas that are there yield and accept the results of the elections without creating disturbances? Have there been any guarantees made to make sure that those players are not going to spoil the outcome of the elections? I think that phase of pause that is desperately needed now is one that requires a very prompt reassessment of why have those issues not been addressed in the last 6 months and how to bring it to resolution as fast as possible. Fadil brought a very important point. This is not going to be a perfect elections. There are going to be less than perfect. There will be compromises. We know that HNEC has been given a manual, a book of how to do it, but it's just like somebody who's never done it before. And I think that there will be some errors and so on. We need to anticipate those errors and try and be willing to accept some of it, but also the fundamental ones need to be addressed before that. So a pause of 2 to 3 months is not a time to relax, but a time to also not just vent, but to address them in an efficient manner. I really, really believe the most important element today to address are the two components, the lead controversial issues and how to basically take them out of the equation. And that, I think, is a power of Security Council. If somebody have actually signed an agreement that has been supervised by the United Nations and actually breached this agreement, then this individual needs to be removed promptly, not just for the sake of Libya, but the sake of the credibility of the United Nations and whatever they want to do anywhere else in the world. If there are spoilers or potential spoilers in Libya today or controversy by individuals, and let's just be very honest, I mean, Saif al-Islam is a very controversial issue. I think there are some ways whereby for the sake of Libya, there could be a conversation to be held and persuasion whereby this is not the time for them at this time to be part of this election process. There's also controversy. There's only one. We're not running for a president of different regions. We're running for a president in one circle, which is the whole of Libya. And there is a lot of controversy about the powerful man in Cyrenaica and Libya, Khalifa Haftar. If Khalifa Haftar is an individual that is, again, very controversial, and sadly, you know, it's not just him. There's other controversial figures. It depends on the eye of the beholder. But those potential spoilers, and whether it is by them or perceived by others, and I'm not taking any sides here, then there has to be a process whereby we can come to a cleaner slate of candidates to the election process and to the electoral day. There are some other issues which are judicial, looking at the files of how the judicial system in Libya approved or disapproved of candidates. I think that is going to take some time, but I think there has to be some assistance and advice to the judicial system as to how to wrap this up rapidly. And ultimately, HNEC is the final say in anything that is going to happen in the next 2 to 3 months. I honestly, personally believe that Kubis did a good job, contrary to what a lot of people have said in the last few months, but he was faced with a situation which is mission impossible. And I think he gave HNEC the credit that it deserves. He clearly has stated repeatedly that HNEC has the decision power to delay, to postpone, to do whatever is necessary to get the elections to fruition. He even indicated to technical aspects that may allow HNEC to postpone. So the eyes are all towards HNEC and their decision, whether they're going to be postponing for a few months or not. But I really believe that the United Nations is going to need to act a little bit better, hopefully with Stephanie coming back. And they really need to very promptly, together with the Libyan partners and the Berlin signatories and those individuals and countries that have actually stepped in to help Libya, to rapidly and efficiently in the next 2 to 3 months, address all of those aspects that are a little bit on the loose side. So yes, there has to be elections. Yes, I think a pause of 2 to 3 months with a very clear vision, not just another kind of innuendo of what are we going to do and so on. There has to be very clear points that need to be addressed and tackled in the next few months. And yes, there has to be elections without any further delays. So that's my point of view in what I'm hearing today and what I think should happen.
Great. Hani, extremely clear. Basically, you addressed the three main candidate issues in Debeba, in Saif, and in Haftar. You addressed all three, and you even put forward a time frame of 2 to 3 months with a focused agenda led by UNSMIL of dealing with these outstanding issues. Now, in the time we have remaining, we have about 12 minutes to go. Who would like to respond to
Muhammad is raising his hand. Muhammad is Sharah. Perhaps we can get him.
Please, Mohammed, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm stationary now, so hopefully I'll I'll be even more concise. I will start with a few comments on something that Dr. Hani said, which is that we, as Libyans, we have a habit of blaming others. But let me make something clear. We have not been alone in Libya since 2011. It was never, or there was never a chance for a Libyan decision since the UN Security Council resolutions to intervene in Libya, and since the establishment of the United Nations support mission to Libya that has the power to report on Libya and decide on political processes, on the economy and on the military track, etc. That is one thing. And even during the war in 2011, when there were initiatives to hold dialogue between the revolutionaries and the Gaddafi regime at the time, and there was one led by Libyans and another led by the African Union, but they were vetoed by France at the time. So, and even throughout, now you have thousands of mercenaries on the ground. You have actual forces, foreign forces on the ground. What more can Libyans do than actually go and collect their voting cards? At Libya Desk, we have conducted a nationwide polling, and we're putting turnout at 82%. People who are saying yes, we are ready to vote in the upcoming elections. As Libyan citizens, what more could they do in the face of this? And another point on some points that Zahra mentioned, but I want to be more clear on, which is UNSMIL and Stephanie. Stephanie was successful in pushing something through with all its positives and negatives. And I think there are more negatives than there are positives, to be honest. But let's be clear that Stephanie oversaw and resided over a UN process that was corruption-ridden. There was a lot of corruption there. And we have Annex 13 that Libyans have been deprived from viewing to see who has been corrupt. And now there are suggestions that UNSMIL staff, like Stephanie's own former colleagues, were implicated in corruption. Some of them have been compromised and they are subject to blackmail, where there is conflict of interest in the way that they conduct themselves. Now, Stephanie comes back to this reality. So let's be clear here that she needs to deal with this in order to gain back some trust as someone who is able to hopefully deliver something. The issue of corruption still hangs out there. The fact that our prime minister bought his way through, the fact that he faked some of the documents that were presented to UNSMIL when he presented his candidacy for the premiership of the GNU. All of this needs to be considered and addressed for UNSMIL for Stephanie to really be successful in this new role. And the other thing is, in any process going forward, we have to ask a key question. What will the agency of our people be? What sort of decision or what sort of agency and power will they play going forward? And who is going to have the power to tell 2.5 million Libyans that you are not going to be able to vote for a president, maybe only just for a parliament for the time being? Who has the power or the right to tell Libyans that you cannot, for whatever reason that might come? So there have been rules of the game agreed. There has been an agreement agreed with all their downflows and the problems that we have known existed all along. Now is not the time to make a U-turn. Previously, we had negotiations between political groups and political parties, and then it went to dialogue between institutions that are hijacked by individuals. The next dialogue will be between families. That is what is going to happen. We are being robbed as Libyans, or the Libyan people are being robbed of any agency. So we have the right as people to actually blame, and we should have the right to blame others who have the power to make decisions, to invite people to dialogues, to invite corrupt people, corrupt Libyans, and appoint them as leaders of the country. So these are the points that I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. We're coming near the end. Let me just quickly say two things. Number one is that point about corruption within the UN is so important. And the fact that UNSMIL staff members could be subject to blackmail and be compromised when the UN, as Hani has just pointed out, has a critical role, and others, Azza has pointed out, a critical role, and Zara as well, to play here, and yet staff have allegedly been corrupted and now are compromised. That is so important. I can only urge you to write about that and to try, particularly in press. Stephanie's from the United States to get attention. Obviously, she has support surely from the Biden administration to write about that and make that known. And as Hani said, take advantage of this, whatever limited delay there is to press that. Just the other, quickly, Mohammed, the point about that Libyans were not alone there. The only thing, I defer to all of you, of course, your expertise here, but the only thing is my understanding is, in contrast to many other situations, post-conflict transitions, in most other countries, the people recognize the limitations of the situation. That, particularly in this case, under Gaddafi, basically there were no institutions. The institution was Gaddafi. And that there was no willingness really across the board in Libya, very little willingness, almost none, to have an international presence, to have even a temporary security presence to prevent what happened so that Libyans themselves could build the case. And in that sense, I'm afraid Libyans do have to accept that responsibility. In most other countries, you would have had some type of foreign UN peacekeeping presence to supply stability for a time when the institutions could develop and the people could take charge of their own affairs. Anyone else? Dr. Hani, do you want to say anything? Or we have
others that want to comment.
Azza has a hand raised, and Zara.
And Zahra too. So why don't we have Zahra and then Azza? They both had their hands up. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to say the issue here, it's not anymore elections or no elections. The pause is basically to work on how are we going to mitigate the challenges. And let me remind us all here that the elections came from the Berlin conclusions, and the Berlin conclusions is based on a comprehensive approach to the Libyan crisis, acknowledging that it's not only the political aspect that matters, but security, military, and economic. So there are three dimensions that we still need to work on in order to have a successful elections. So again, I think ending the siloing between the three tracks is where we should begin. I don't think the pause or this period that whether it's 3 months or 5 months should be only spent in dealing with legal and technical issues. No, this is a political process. And this political process, according to the Berlin conclusions, has three tracks, and we need to link the tracks. This is a multi-track political process. So all the issues need to be brought back to the political process, dealt with. Yes, definitely with the national, and let us all know that this Berlin process started as an international process. So there is an international, regional, a national track that we need to consider. And that's why we are actually having a pause, because before going ahead with the elections and maybe having surprise results to some regional or national or international political stakeholders, this is the time to make political deals. This is not, does not mean that we will defraud Libyans, because we see there is a great turnout. But this is the time to see, like the meetings like Mohammed Al-Jarrah had yesterday with Libya desk and with the 16 presidential candidates, the pact. Not only that, I think, and I've been saying this over and over again, we need to have a national charter and to address the real issues, which are the economic issues related to local governance, related to decentralization. Dr. Hani pointed out to a real problematic in the electoral law, presidential electoral law, and people are not addressing at all those who are against, ironically, against the law are people in the West. And this is the first presidential elections, and Libya will be elected, the president will be elected from one electoral district. So it means that if hypothetically that the East has a candidate or the West has a candidate, that 70% of the population, which we know it is in the West, will basically, if this is hypothetically, if the West has one candidate in mind. So all these issues, I know that we will develop over time. If we're successful enough in this elections, it will be another roundabout. It will be another decade like we had before. This is if we're successful enough. That's why there is a chance while we're stopping now. And if we're not even considering to go to plan B, but I will always say there is a plan B, because if it's not now, it's after 5 years, we're coming to that. We need to renew all these tracks, link them together, and especially the economic track. There will be another kind of power sharing, the real power sharing that is based on local governance, on decentralization, on distributive justice. This might be the carrot for accepting the elections. Thank you.
Very good. Azza, please go ahead. Azza, can you unmute? Can you unmute?
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. I always stated that the tracks that Ghassan Salama has provided in his plan misses a legal track. And all of my opinion, all of what we are seeing today is because of the lack of the legal track. The failure of establishing a constitutional base, the loopholes in the legislations. Today, what are we going to do with the elections? Now you have to go, regardless of any political settlement, which I think is important. But now there are elements that you can use in the laws to have a way out. There is a way out. I can see it in the legislation itself. And I don't think that the West, the problem in Libya is West and East, and that the Libyans from the West will elect someone from the West. This has proven to be wrong, actually. Lots of people would elect the guy who is the good guy for them. Libyans now are mature with democracy, and they know what's happening, and they look how they're reacting to the prime minister who is from the West. Western people are reacting the same way as from any place else. I don't think that this is an issue at all, actually, my opinion, which is really something that I always loved in Libya, and make me really, But when we talk about surprises, every election has surprises. What about the American elections? When the FBI president came out with this statement just 2-3 days before the date of the election. What do you think? This was a surprise. And the American couldn't even swallow how they react with that, or the scandals that happened there just before the election. So elections are always full of surprises. But what is the way out? I think there are lots of positive things in the legislation that can provide the way out. And the authority that the HNEC has based on the legislation are very vast. Vetting is important. They can vet again. There's nothing that impede HNEC to vet again the candidates today. Do another vetting and actually even ask experts, because in the law they said HNEC, the Libyan law, the Libyan legislation, number 8 says that HNEC should work on international standard. Let's use this with pressure from Stephanie Williams, who I totally agree with Al Jarrah. She will never end up her mission with a scandal of corruption. That's not possible. She's back, actually, I think, in my opinion, she's back to put this mess, to bring a solution on this related to this mess. Because once this chapter 13 gets out, it's a big issue. It's a blowout in the face of the UN. So today, there are some steps based on legal legislation can be taken. Why not asking a vetting international expert to come and vet these candidates? Why HNEC cannot publish the files of these people? These are candidates. These are people who are going to hold Libya in their hands. We have to see their papers. And the law says every decision should be done in public of HNEC. So lots of things can be used, actually. But don't undermine, please, the legal aspects of the matter. We cannot continue just with economy and political and security, which are very important. But the legal issue is very important too. It's essential, in my opinion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So this is really a very important point. Are you saying that we actually probably need a credentialing committee, a proper credentialing committee that will look into not just the casual Libyan way of, okay, you show the papers that you're clear criminally and so on, but what are the true credentials of the candidates? Are their certificates correct? Did they actually go to that university and get their PhD from there, or this is just garbage in and garbage out? I honestly think Libyans do need help. And it's really sad for me to see that because of security issues, which are legitimate, there are many of the internationals that are making decisions that are not educated because they're simply not in Libya. In fact, some of the observers that are supposed to be in Libya watching the elections and supervising it or observing it are doing these from offices in Tunis and Cairo and so on. And just basically relying on local Libyans, again, with all the limitations. You can train them, but you can't turn a person from a very basic individual from the street to a cardiac surgeon in a period of about 3 months of training. There needs to be a little bit more presence and engagement by internationals in Libya. And if security is a matter that you're actually tabooing and saying that we can't cross to Libya because of this and that, then what are you talking about, a level of confidence that you want to give to Libyans that are coming to election that is very essential for them? So there are some loose ends in there that needs to be tidied up at different technical levels. And if these are met, and you are absolutely right, Azza, on this, then I think we would have not a perfect elections, but a little bit better elections. And those are opportunities that we need to capture on. I just don't want to go on and on and on, but Edward, I'm sorry I took over. It was a little bit of an emotional aspect for me, but you're moderating the session, so go ahead and lead again. I'm sorry about that.
No, this is, Hani, this is great. This is what it's all about. We've got to be spontaneous here. This is a complex situation. If there are no other interventions, Dr. Shanib, I think perhaps we should close it, but I would just say that we've really covered a lot of ground here. And I think that not only that, these speakers have given us some concrete ideas about what to do in this interim period, including you, Annie, zeroing in on those 3 candidates and finding out a method to dispense with those issues. Like, as you said, for SAFE, for example, it's simply not possible to have him as a candidate at this point. And Zara pointed out, look, we've got to do more than just focus on technical things in this postponement period. We've got to get down on and advance these political tracks and bring together the security, the political, and the economic. And Azza pointed out that you've got overarching legal issues to address, and that those can't be neglected. And Fadil and Mohammed both pointed out to us the overarching need and the realities that we face, that you can't just plunge in ahead on an election, but that there is a need to have some kind of postponement. And I think another theme here, Hani, I'll close with, is that there is a responsibility on the part of the international community, that this is a shared effort, that Libyans have to have agency, and they do have their share and must accept their share of responsibility. In reality, the majority of share responsibility for the situation, but the international community, in particular UNSMIL, has its own responsibility, and those elements about corruption have to be addressed, and hopefully Stephanie Williams will tackle those head on. And Wolfgang, I thought, also shared us with the most likely scenarios, and the effort now should be to take these excellent suggestions to achieve the best possible scenario for Libya. So Dr. Shanib, let me hand it to you for closing remarks. And from my side, thanks to all the speakers and to the viewers. This was an outstanding program. Dr. Shanib, please.
Well, thank you, Edward, for moderating an excellent event. Thank you, everyone that participated. We really, really value your expertise. I think this is a discussion to be carried on. As everyone said here, this is not a time to relax, but to intensify. I think that there are a level of expertise on this side of the Atlantic Ocean that can actually help in every aspect, technical aspects, legal aspects, judicial aspect, economic aspects and so on. And the one thing that is not apparent is that the Libyans really want to know a little bit more about what are we doing from an economic point of view? What are we doing? And with time frames, we talk about the unification of the banks, but we also know that people are not that stupid. They know that there are still two entities. There is, 5+5, the security aspect is still very, very frail and could blow up at any time. And it all hinges, ironically, on the results of the elections. Everybody's holding on to their own little thing in there and waiting to see if it suits them, then they'll go. But if it doesn't suit them, there is a potential for fracture again. And this fracture could be anything from a soft partition to a really, really hard partition, including military confrontation. So if we're not working on diffusing all those things with very clear things, people are still wondering what is going on. The information is just trickled to social media through social media. And I think that if Libya is still under Chapter 7, that the UN security and the bodies that are involved with the United Nations should make a little bit more effort to clarify things to the common Libyans, to give them the sense it's not just about the elections only, but here is the real map, as Zahra said, economically, to correct these things with deadlines and frames and so on that people can understand. Libyans don't really care at the end how it looks, but they really care so much about their day-to-day life and how it is compromised, and they want to get out of all this. That is why Debeba was very successful in throwing away money here and there and getting people married and getting some popularity. So I think if we don't pay attention also to the other aspect of showing Libyans in a step-by-step manner that this is what is going to be happening in the next 3 months, for that matter, the UN and everybody else could be locked into a room doing all their homework, and then just basically the Libyans would be left outside this room, unaware of what is happening, They need to get that confidence back on the United Nations role in Libya. This is going to be a very important part of their mission over there. Make it very transparent and very clear. No more of those little hidden things that you do, and then people are surprised. Oh, guess what? The LPDF came up with a new government, and the new government, by the way, has this element of corruption or so on and so on in it. People want to be engaged, even if there is some sort of representation that is imposed temporarily on them. Everybody knows that 75 people that were chosen were not necessarily chosen from the grounds. That is the legitimate issue of everything that we do in Libya. But at least if there is very clear notification on a step-by-step way as to what is going to be happening in the next 2 to 3 months of delay, that is going to be huge. Educate the Libyans minute by minute as to what you are planning to do and what you are doing on a day-to-day basis. And I want to thank everybody on this. Thank you very much for a very stimulating conversation. Stay tuned. I am sure we will have another one very soon to follow up on what is happening in regards to the elections. Thank you again.